Good morning, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Lieutenant Richard Gradillas. I am a lieutenant here in Operations Division Midtown. I am assigned to the VIVA area. Additionally, my responsibilities for Operations Division Midtown is going to be Speedway, everything north of. I know this slide was presented during our last VIVA meeting. I wanted to get it to you guys for your neighborhood meeting so you guys have it because there's a lot of good information here. So I wanted to make sure I had this recording so you guys can have this, view it for those that weren't able to attend. So the summary of kind of what we're going to talk about is going to be calls for service. The calls for service during this, quarter or VIVA update increased during the first half of 2026, while reported crime cases remained relatively stable. So I'll kind of touch base on that. The next slide I'll kind of explain what we're looking at. Crime patterns and gun-related incidents continue to follow established trends with no significant changes. We're holding steady on those. We all like to see a decrease, but holding steady is good. If we can be in a holding pattern, that'll give us some time to go on a decrease on it. Activity remains concentrated during afternoons and early evening hours, supporting our current deployment strategies. So what we're seeing is a majority of our violent crime is actually occurring between the hours of 4 and 9. I'll get into that a little bit during the slide and explain kind of why that's important for the way we deploy our resources. Proactive enforcement and partnerships continue to address reoccurring problem locations and quality of life concerns. So we have proactive activity. We have our Zebra units and our CRT undercover units within the division. I'll get a little bit into that. They are doing deployments on top of doing just everyday active, proactive patrols in the area. Another thing we're going to talk about is environmental design and SEPTED initiatives. They're expanding our long-term problem-solving efforts beyond traditional enforcement. So that'll kind of go into what we're doing about looking at the areas around it. We're looking at the environment where we can change. I'm going to go into a little bit on the bus stops. I'll be speaking a little bit about Speedway and Alvernon and how that directly impacts the Alvernon and Grant corridor. Data continues to guide our deployments and decisions and problem-solving efforts, as well as long-term strategies for improvements in life in the VIVA corridor. So as you can see on this slide, this is what we were talking about with the overall activity. This is going to be from January of 2026 to June of 2026. So looking at the calls for service, and we kind of broke it down from the same time frame, June to January, starting in 2023, going to 24, 25, and 26. The CFS stands for calls for service. That means that's how many times somebody's called 911. 2023, we looked at 1745, 24, 1523, 25, 1494, and in 2026, we're at 1762. So as you can see, we're at a significant amount of calls for service. We're jumped up during this time frame about 320 from last year. What's interesting is that cases wise, and cases are something where officer writes a police report on it. We're staying about even from where we were at last year, 444 this year to 441 last year. I'll tell you why that's important is because we're having our neighbors and the neighborhoods such as yourselves call 911 report things. So not every 911 call gets documented with a case report. Sometimes something as simple as a suspicious activity can get a call for service, and that's what you see the CFS for, but it doesn't generate a case report. So officers go in the area, if we see a pattern of suspicious activity, 4 or 5 of them, same person matching, maybe on that 5th or 6th one, then a case actually gets written on that one. But we're getting that data to kind of document everything that's occurring in the neighborhood, so we're really pleased with that. We want to see the calls for service up because that means you as citizens are reporting crime in the area or suspicious activity in the area. That helps us lead to arrests and cases ultimately at the end. The increased service demand has not translated into a proportional increase in reportable crime. It's kind of what I just touched on right now. Those numbers are pending. Those were from almost the last week of June, so I wasn't able to get those stats put into the slideshow, but that's kind of where we're at right now, sitting in the last week of June. So this is an interesting one to have. I wanted to break it down. We all know we can break down crime by areas with the heat maps and stuff like that. I know you guys have heard that before, especially when it comes to VIVA or P&I. We look at areas, we look at things at heat maps, we see red, and then it expands out to yellow and expands out to blue. So that's kind of how we determine locations on where it's at. But what we also want to look at, how we also deploy our resources, is we're looking at activity by day and time. So these ones have our days: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it tells you the days on kind of what we look at. So, and it also breaks it down by time, all the way from midnight, all the way to midnight the next day. So how this compares for violent crime, this is just violent crime related, this isn't property crime. So we're focused on violent crime right now. Compares violent crime calls from January to June 2023 to 2026, and then this year, January to June 2026. Violent crime continues to peak during afternoon and evening hours, so a lot of the violent crime that we are seeing is occurring between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. at night. The reason why that's important is because that allows us to do our specialized deployments during those times to make sure that officers are in the area. That heat map we talked about, but also we're also using the location plus the times. It's the best way to utilize our resources. So we're not just utilizing them and putting them in just areas, we're also utilizing them and putting them in areas at the right time. So that's very important. So 2026 closely mirrors the long-term trend that we're seeing from the last 3 years with no significant changes in patterns. Current deployment strategies right now are aligning with the data that we're seeing. So our deployments are really working. We're doing everything from noon to 10 and 2 to midnight, and sometimes our officers stay out a little later. And we're concentrating not just on the areas, but in the right times as well. So this is kind of important. Again, that's how we deploy our resources. It's kind of what the data is telling us. I talked about geographic, the heat map. This is kind of a resemblance of it. It's not exactly the heat map when you're looking at an actual geographic map. This is kind of just telling us what we're looking at and the biggest areas we're looking at. We look at the VIVA area at the very top. So that's overall VIVA area, 1,755 calls, and that's going to be from January of 2026 to June of 2026. And then the two that we have highlighted on there are going to be Oasis and Mount Lemmon. Historically, before my time, and I've only been here since March, Oasis and Mount Lemmon have been two of our biggest, so Mount Lemmon, formerly Georgetown, have been two of our biggest call generators. So that's what we have them right there. As you can see, Mount Lemmon, formerly Georgetown, has decreased in calls for service. You've had new ownership there, so it's helped a lot. They've been working with us a little bit more than previous ownership, our previous management, so we're able to get some of that calls for service down. They've done some of that SEPTED changes that we've looked at. They've done a lot of different things there. It's helped, and the crime has definitely decreased there. Oasis is becoming a great partner with us now. They're looking about doing crime-free multi-housing, as well as trespassing letters on file. Both Oasis and Mount Lemmon have provided rent rolls for us, which is huge. Allows us to know who's living there. Doesn't give any dates of birth or anything like that. It's just basically a name of people who are living there. That allows us and our units, like our CRT and our Bravo units, or our Bravo units and Zebra units, to find wanted offenders, maybe for the violent crimes or felony warrants. So that stuff's been going. It's been a process. It's slow moving, but we are moving in the right direction. A lot of times these things take time, but in 3 months here, I think we've made some big steps working with our partners. One of the things they wanted to touch on too is going to be the gun crime in this area. And we're looking at the VV area when it comes to gun crime. So looking at the two stats there, I know they might be hard to read or hard to see, but what I can tell you from that data and the charts is most gun-related incidents involve offenses other than shootings, and I'll kind of explain that right now. I'll break it down a little bit more right now. We've had 3 non-fatal shootings with injuries, no fatal shootings in 2026, which is good. It's never good when somebody gets shot, but not having a fatal in 2026, being almost halfway through the year, that's a good sign. Monthly gun crimes remain relatively stable with no sustained upward trends. Again, we're stable right now. We're kind of leveling, but we're not seeing an increase. So the way I look at it is now we're starting to get stabilized. Now we can start focusing on what's going to decrease that violent crime and the gun crime in the VIVA area. So we're doing this by target enforcement, continues to focus on reducing gun violence and repeat offenders. So it's kind of something that we're looking at. We're looking at people who've been arrested before and if they're the ones that are continuously involved in these same type of crimes. So when it goes back to offenses other than shootings with guns, some of that comes into play with our CRT guys, our Bravo guys, our Zebra guys, finding people with guns on them either during narcotics arrests or any kind of other criminal offenses. And what it's telling us is that these are either prohibited possessors or we're getting these guns because they've been used in other kind of offenses other than shooting somebody. So we're getting guns off the streets before they're being used. So seeing a bigger chart of that gray and the chart that's on the very top is really good to see. It's better than seeing that red or that yellow or the orange, because that's telling us that those guns were actually used to hurt somebody or used in a violent offense. So for crime trends, overall crime patterns have remained relatively consistent during the first half of 2026. So all the patterns that we're seeing has kind of been relating to what we've been seeing before, which is kind of standard. Violent crime and gun-related incidents continue to follow established trends with no significant shifts. Again, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about with us leveling out. Activity remains concentrated during afternoon and early evening hours. That goes back to what we looked at on the time, excuse me, the time and date chart. So it's concentrated in certain time frames. We're seeing a majority of that gun-related violent crime happening between the hours of 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. So it gives us an idea of where we need to put our resources at, and majority of the time where these violent offenders and these criminals are being active. But one thing I will say with that is that that's only data up to June. Obviously, June becomes summer months. July, August gets pretty hot. So we'll see those trends kind of change a little bit once we get that new data point, probably later in the year. A small number of recurring locations continue to generate a disproportionate amount of police activity. It's kind of why we highlighted a little bit of the Oasis and Mount Lemmon inside there to compare to the VIVA area. Those have been two historically of our higher call generators. So that's kind of what we compared it to. So we look at that, we look at areas, and usually we're trying to see these small concentrated areas are occurring and they're counting for a lot more of that crime that we're seeing. So if we can make sure we get the right locations along with the right times, that allows us to kind of curb that. Current deployment strategies remain aligned with identified crime trends. So what we talked about and how we deploy resources is kind of aligning with everything that we just spoke about. Current operational strategies, what we're doing is directed patrols. We have directed patrols, or we assign officers along with our Zebra and CRT teams to go to certain areas during certain times, and what we tell them to do is go find crime and address it. Go talk to people jaywalking, go talk to people loitering, go talk to people that are acting suspicious in the area. Those are our directed patrols. They're there at a specific time and location, just doing nothing but enforcement, not taking calls for service. SEPTED assessments is going to be in our environmental design. We look at different areas, intersections, bus stops, trees, shrubbery, anything that we can see in the area, and how we can kind of adjust it to see if the criminal element's kind of festering there and how we can change that environment so they're not there anymore. Crime-free multi-housing. I know Mr. Bowers with Oasis has recently reached out to us, asked how he can become part of that, which is great. I'll have to double check. I think Mount Lemmon's on top of that with us right now. That gives us an extra tool as law enforcement in order to be able to get people out of these areas and out of the VIVA area. If they're renting or if they're renting a house or an apartment, anybody can be part of that crime-free multi-housing that has kind of a rental property. Code enforcement partnerships. We look at areas, if there's areas that are allowing the criminal element to kind of fester there and they're not within code, we partner with code enforcement. We go there with them. We look at these and we're able to kind of do some enforcement with them. They have different tools than we do. They can condemn places, they can condemn buildings if it gets to that point where they can end up getting things so people can't live there anymore or kind of squat there anymore. It's one of those things that's just another tool for us. Property management collaboration. I kind of spoke about Mr. Bowers earlier, and as well as Mount Lemmon. We're working with them great. Would like to give both of them a big shout out. They gave us the rent rolls. We want to see that continued partnership with monthly rent rolls. Mr. Bowers has also agreed to allow us to assess his property for possible implementation of cameras in the area. So we are working with VIVA in the city to see if we can end up using some of that money to try to further that, get the cameras installed, and help us kind of curb that criminal element that's there. Community engagement, that's big. It kind of goes back to what I talked about, having everybody call 911. Even if you don't think that 911 needs to be called, it should be. All those reports, they play a role into us. We look at all that data. We look at where 911's calls from. So it allows us to know where we need to put our resources at. So don't hesitate. Call 911. If they try to direct you somewhere else, 311 or something, be insistent, be persistent. Ask for 911 even if you're going to report something. We do get the 311 data, just a little bit more delayed than the 911 data. So some of the operational success I want to kind of talk about. Our CRT units have done 2 deployments since I've been here since March. Our first one was May 28th, 2026. With these deployments, our objectives are going to be address quality of life concerns, criminal activity, and repeat offenders. The resources that we use our patrol officers, our Zebra unit, and our CRT, which is our undercover unit and patrol officers. The results from that initial one was 16 contacts. It means we contacted 16 people during that deployment with 6 arrests. Those 6 arrests included felony warrants, criminal trespassing, drug paraphernalia, and disorderly conduct related violations. Demonstrated coordinated and proactive enforcement while improving quality of life within the Midtown Viva area. We had another one this past Tuesday, last week, that resulted in about 10 contacts. I think we ended up with 6 arrests as well. 3 of them were for felony arrests. For Dodge Flower, there's that bus stop that's right there off of Flower on Alvernon. We ended up doing some surveillance at that bus stop that resulted in 3 arrests. One of those arrests helped lead our undercover units to serve a search warrant in the Midtown area for narcotics. So we got what we believe to be a dealer off the streets who was supplying that bus stop at that time. Obviously, it's still a very heavily used bus stop, so we're looking at that and continuing doing enforcement there, as well as some of the SEPTED stuff we talked about, trying to make that environment a little bit less comfortable for people. So, kind of continuing on the SEPTED, environmental design, the SEPTED initiatives, kind of talked about earlier. Speedway in Alvernon is something that we ended up looking at when I first came in March. The reason why I bring up Speedway in Alvernon, and I know it's out of the VIVA area, is because what we found is we would push and do enforcement at Grant and Alvernon. It pushed everybody south. We would go to Alvernon and Speedway, and it pushed everybody north. So I like to say, as we were playing Pong, for those of you that remember Pong, we were playing Pong back and forth and just pushing the problem north, south, north, south. So some of the environmental conditions that we looked at the Alvernon Speedway intersections, we wanted to make sure that we can get ahead of that for Grant and Alvernon before it's fully built and fully finished. Because if we can find what's working for Speedway and Alvernon and implement it in Grant and Alvernon before it's built, I think that'll just save us the headache of having to look at things and then go readjust it and kind of waste everybody's money and time by having to keep changing things when we can just try to address it right off the bat first. Environmental conditions at this intersection directly influence pedestrian movements, quality of life concerns, and activity within the VIVA corridor. Some of the assessment highlights we looked at when we looked at Alvernon and Speedway were evaluated bus stops locations and surrounding infrastructures. A great example of that is a Speedway gas station. We put more riprap around there after we've already put some there before to make it less habitable for people. We identified opportunities to riprap and camping and loitering. So the riprap discourages people from kind of laying down and getting out of that area. It's that rock that you see, and additionally, just laying it down, we also decided to put concrete it into the ground. So that helps out, so it can't be moved. The rocks can't be picked up and used to damage vehicles or assault people. We reviewed slanted bus benches to encourage transients while reducing prolonged occupancy. So these bus benches are slanted at an angle similar to this. Speedway in Alvernon and Grant Alvernon, working with Suntran, they have 3 buses that go on that route. They come every 20 to 30 minutes. So if you're there really using the bus stops, you should only be there for that 20-30 minutes, which is those benches are not very comfortable, but they're comfortable enough to last there for during that time. So Suntran's already told me that they've ordered those as a trial run to see how it goes, and I believe Speedway in Alvernon, Grant Alvernon, and Park and Ajo are going to be some of the test subjects for that. It's a 24-week turnaround time, so it can take some time to get those in and in place. We're heading in the right direction. The process is slow moving, but we are heading in the right direction. Recommendations may be incorporated to ongoing intersections, such as the Grant Alvernon intersection. So it's something that the city's been open to and wanting to work with us. Suntran's been wanting to work with us, so it's been good. We're moving in a positive direction. So looking ahead, we need to continue focused patrols during peak activity hours. That's where that data comes in. Calling 911 is very important. We also want to strengthen our partnerships with the apartment management and city departments. We are working on that. That has been successful. We want to keep working on it, keep growing those relationships, and keep growing. I think it's only going to get better as time goes on. We want to expand our SEPTED recommendations and crime-free multi-housing participation. So we want to look at all these areas where we're seeing this crime go, how we can change the environment around it, and how we can also do crime-free housing in some of these apartment complexes or just anywhere that renters are, high rent areas basically. We want to target chronic problem locations and with chronic times. So we're looking at that stuff, trying to see where we can best do our targeted approach to this stuff. Monitor seasonal trends and adjust deployments as needed. It's kind of what I talked about with the stats that are going to be coming in for the summertime. We'll probably see our violent crime hours change from that 4 to 9 to probably later in the afternoon. I'm probably guessing more closer to 6 to midnight, just because the heat has the effect on people. You're not going to want to see a lot of people commit violent crime in the heat that we have right now. I mean, it's 105 today. I don't anticipate people doing a whole lot of violent crime in the middle of the day just due to the weather. So this last part for questions, a couple of the things that we got today was our partners on the ODW, our West Side Division, have a thing where they assign each squad different businesses or complexes, and they go check those throughout their shifts for the week. So that's something that we're going to look at to see if we can do that with apartment complexes and select locations within the VIVA area. Additionally, somebody asked, what are zebra units and how are they different than our CRT units? Our zebra units are strictly patrol officers. They're in patrol clothes. They don't respond to calls for service. They will take calls for service, but their main job is to do projects at the direction of the division. So myself, the other lieutenant, and the captain. So that's kind of what their sole purpose is. That's what they do. If we have an issue with them, I'll give you an example. Our partners out east decided to do a median deployment. They asked us if we wanted to. They had resources out there. We had our zebra units along with some patrol officers go out. They did a median deployment for 5 hours, which resulted in, I think, 26 shopping carts taken, 16 citations. So those are kind of projects that they work on during the day, and most of the time they are during daytime hours, 7 to 5, 8 to 6. That's what they work. Our CRTs have the ability to be plain clothes, regular clothes, do undercover work, as well as be uniform. We also use them for special projects as well. My name is going to be up there on the left, Lieutenant Richard Gradillas. The station number is going to be a direct line to my office phone. My work cell is the best way to get a hold of me. If I don't answer you, please leave a message, shoot me a text message, or it can be reached at my email that's there too. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this presentation. If you guys have any questions, concerns, or anything, feel free to reach out. Hopefully we can all work together to try to make the VIVA area a better, safer place. Thank you.